Ever wondered what it would be like to quit your job, live on your savings, explore the world? Well, my next guest has been doing just that for a number of years. And thanks to smart financial decisions and a passion for exploring, she travels internationally, meeting people from all walks of life, and shares her experiences and those cost cutting hacks online. Christina Gawlik, welcome to the Stories of Service podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am excited to have you. I just think that our story, too, is just so incredibly unique, as I met you on a cruise ship of all things. And I think my husband had been doing some searches on some of the cruise ship Facebook groups, and there you were. So it's just a really neat opportunity to talk a little more with you. But before we get started, I do want to welcome everyone to the Stories of Service podcast, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. This is our 170th episode. And to kick off the episode, as I always do, here's a little bit of a message from my father, Charlie Pickard.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter. Hear from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
And in this episode, we are going to dive in the sun-soaked, wanderlust-filled life of Christina, a true nomad who's made the world her home. She's going to share what it's like to chase an endless summer, immersing herself in vibrant cultures and breathtaking landscapes. From swimming in crystal clear waters to snorkeling through underwater wonders, her adventures are as exhilarating as they are inspiring. But they're more than just the scenery. She's going to open up today about her love for connecting with locals, learning their stories, and exploring how their lives have unfolded from childhood to the present day. Along the way, she indulges her passion for trying new cuisines, savoring flavors that tell a story all their own. Whether you're a fellow wanderer or simply dreaming of that next escape, hopefully this episode will leave you inspired to pack your bags and explore the world in a more meaningful way. And we'll also talk about the movement that has been growing, met a lot in recent media called FIRE, Financial Independence Retire Early, which is a movement for those that are choosing now to not necessarily retire, but to work on their own terms. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you.
So first off, I always like to ask my podcast guests, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Kansas, and that's where I did my primary schooling and university as well. I went to University of Kansas, the Jayhawks, and K-State as well. So I have a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about your early career. What did you go into? And a little bit about your life when you were still in the, I call it like the working world, the 9-to-5 world.
Yeah, after my bachelor's and master's, I actually became a high school math teacher. And I did that for a few years and decided that I wanted to go ahead and get that doctorate so I could teach at the university level. So I did that and became a university math professor from that, with a focus on not only just math, but math education, and more so how people learn math. So a lot of my career has been built around professional development for teachers so they can provide the best education they can for students to learn mathematics, as well as pure mathematics too. I've taught those courses. I've worked at several universities, as well as maybe like junior colleges or community colleges throughout the US. I did teach high school in Kansas as well. But then after I received my doctorate, I became a professor in Texas. And I also then moved, that was the greater Dallas area. And then I moved up to Chicago and I was a professor up there. And after that, I moved over to Louisiana, where I actually started working for ed tech companies. These were geared in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And when I started that new career doing curriculum development for this ed tech company in Louisiana, the building I was in kind of shared a parking lot with a community college. And when the math department learned that there was a new hire in this company and I have a PhD, they reached out to me to adjunct for them.
Oh my gosh, how cool.
They actually reached out to my boss, who then said, yes, they could ask me if I was interested in working part-time for them because they were short-staffed. It is, difficult to find, people with the right credentials as well as experience too. So although I, had the plan of stepping outside of the classroom role and kind of doing something different with these educational technology companies, I was still kind of reeled back in with that. So that was fun. After Louisiana, I moved to Arizona, the greater Phoenix area, but I was working for another educational technology company that focused just on math and science. They were based in Virginia, but I had a remote position. So I had my base in Arizona, and then I flew all over the US as well as some international travel too. And I helped our sales team working with, CEOs and principals of schools to determine if the curriculum and the resources our company had would be a good fit for their students and teachers as well. And I managed professional development, so I had trainers that would go out and train teachers too, and sometimes I would do that or speak at conferences. So it was kind of a hodgepodge of everything. And that's kind of my career within math and math education, for working with or being an employee, if you will. That kind of took me up to 2017 when I decided to work for myself and be my own boss. And so I quit, and I didn't really have the intention on starting a business. I was really just freelancing. But I freelanced when I was a professor, way back when I first was a professor in Texas. I got connected with an editor with Pearson, the largest textbook company in the world. And I was doing small projects with them as a professor because part of my job responsibility was to publish. And when I decided to go off on my own and see if I could do freelancing full time, I reached back out to those former connections and my network. And I was received with open arms, which was great, especially because I had more time.
Mm-hmm.
As a professor, trying to do it maybe over the holiday breaks, like winter break or summer break. But now I had all the time. So they asked about my availability, and I said, you had it. And I got these really large contracts with them, editing textbooks, creating math videos, creating assessment questions like you would see on the ACT, SAT, GRE, GMAT, all those formal exams.
If I can ask one quick question, I'm just curious, what was it about being a math teacher? Like, why math? I mean, I'm terrible at math. I'm more in the creative arts or the writing or language. And I'm curious. I'm always curious when people are interested in science or math. What was it about?
It was not my intention at all. My freshman year, I actually decided I was going to be an elementary school major, which means, you need to sample all the subject areas. But the blessing that I had was my first semester, we had to go into schools and observe. Honestly, I think it was only like 10 hours of observation. And my first classroom I went into was a kindergarten classroom. And the handful of hours I had in that classroom was all about wiping noses and tying shoes. And I just learned at that point that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't have the patience for the younger age demographic. So, and I kind of already knew that, but I guess I didn't think through it because as a teenager, I taught dance. I did like drill team and I did dance competitions. And so as a teenager, I taught dance to younger kids, ages 5 through 9 it was. The studio I was teaching at, by teaching these younger age groups, they were waiving my tuition. So it was kind of like my own workaway experience with that.
For you to provide value. And then at the same time, for you to be able to take the classes and do the things that you wanted to do. Win-win.
Yeah. So, and my mom really liked that because competitive dance is expensive. And so by being able to get my tuition covered, she was happy with that. So it all worked out. And it was a great experience because when I did, like I said, when I started observing these, kindergarten classes in a public school, I was just like, this isn't the right fit for me. So I'm glad teaching an hour dance class like twice a week is nothing compared to teaching, kindergartners or fifth graders every single day, 5 days a week. It's just a different thing. So when I changed my major in Kansas at the time, when was this? 1997. They had a middle school only certification, which I believe back then was like grades 5 through 8 or 5 through 9, something like that. And you had to pick 2 subject areas. So that's when I chose math and history. The reason why I chose math is that I had a really awesome high school teacher. Her name was Mrs. Debbie Gregory, Mrs. Gregory, and I'm a Mrs. G, but well, actually now I'm a Dr. G. But she was I just really appreciated her as a teacher. She made me feel good about myself. She was the drill team coach and I was in drill team. So
I love it.
Huh?
I just love it. I mean, it just shows you, like, I always say that the people that shape our lives are the people that take an interest and inspire us. And they're the ones that lead us down the paths that we end up choosing.
Yeah. So because of her, I decided to go with math and history. And I wouldn't say that math was necessarily my strongest suit, but I enjoyed it because of her. And it was when I switched into that and I had to start taking some history classes that I realized I am not passionate about history. I find some things interesting, but knowing the volume of coursework I would have to take to satisfy that degree, I just decided that also was not the right fit. So changed my major again. So only 3 times. I think the nation's average is still like 7 times people change a major. And so I only did it 3 times. So, but that's when I went to, what's my certification is in middle secondary. So 5 through 12 is what my Kansas certification is through. And I had to pick one discipline and I went with math. The tail end of my bachelor's program was rough. I sought out help from a tutor. Everything wasn't natural, but I worked hard at it. And I had no intention originally on getting my doctorate and teaching university level. It was when I taught high school that I realized, don't love that age demographic either. So let's go to adults. And kind of same thing with that. When I was an undergrad and master's student, I had the ability to teach at my university at KU, University of Kansas. I was teaching your college algebra course as an undergrad, and working with people my age and older. When I was teaching high school, I was reminiscing about working with more adults, even if they were younger adults. And that's why ultimately I ended up switching again. So.
And then you get down this road where you're now an entrepreneur and you're doing things like working with textbook companies, and you did that for a little while. And then tell me a little bit how the transition became, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, to I'm going to now figure out a way to become a full-time traveler. Because guys, I don't know about you, but I can tell you, I would love the opportunity sometimes to be a full-time traveler, especially for a few months at a time. But to do what Christina's done for years, this is really what I wanted to get into in the show, is like, how in the world can someone do this? So Christina, over to you.
Yeah. So in 2017, as I mentioned, I started freelancing, and it was in 2018, honestly, on Facebook, I came across posts about digital nomads. And it's also the same time that I learned about the FIRE communities, the financial independence, retire early. And so I'm reading posts about these with the digital nomads. They're all saying, hey, I work online remotely. I don't need to be in one single place. I can travel the world and live in amazing places, have new experiences, try different things, make new friends. And that was really intriguing to me. And then at the same time with the FIRE movement, I was reading about how people were retiring at the age of 30. And I was, I don't know, around 37, 38, I think. And I was just like, what? Like, how do you do
How
that?
can this be? Yeah. And that's something that, was growing up, nobody talked about. Like, nobody said to
No.
me or taught me that if I lived below my means at a certain point, that there could come a day where I wouldn't have to work again. The only thing that I knew was that if I stuck around in the military, I could get a pension. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
And from there, those of us who are on active duty in the military, we do have that benefit of knowing that we have a pension, but fire is possible even for those people who don't have pensions.
Yeah. And that's why, like, from 2017 to 2018, so I'm freelancing, and I owned a home in Arizona at that time. It was the second house I physically owned, but I would take my computer and, I would go visit family or friends in other states, because at that time I'd already lived in 5 states, something like that. And I can't remember exactly where I was, but I was out somewhere. And then another friend had reached out to me and asked if I would like to come and visit them. And it just didn't work out because I needed to fly back to where my home was. I had a pool, I had a big house, I had a dog. I needed to tend to having a homestead. And I was kind of bummed because work-wise, I can take my computer anywhere. A lot of emails I just do on my cell phone anyways, not my laptop. And that's when I really started reading more into what does it mean to be a digital nomad. And in 2018, I really did research on that. And I found that if I left the United States and I started living in other communities around the world, maybe for 3 months at a time or this and that, my expenses were going to drop significantly. And I was already making solid income working for myself, and my business was growing. So if I could increase my income, decrease my expenses, the savings gap, I can save and invest. And that's where that fire community comes into. And that's how I, learn through the readings and podcasts and the Facebook groups, how other people were retiring so early. So I decided that's really when I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and I looked up different countries that I thought might be interesting to me. And I would just search on like Google Maps and look at grocery stores and see if I can find like prices of groceries, or even at restaurants, what's an average cost of a meal. I would think about the type of activities I like to do, and then I would see what that would cost in a particular area. Same with transport. And then it's pretty easy to figure out like rent prices in general. Like doing a search on Airbnb is one simple way. And I know that those prices are inflated because I can get a better deal if I rent direct when I get somewhere.
And that is key. So key.
Yeah.
I just want to just kind of hover on that point for just a moment. A lot of people don't understand that you can do that, and that you can tell us a little bit about, even through Airbnb, sometimes there are some hacks of where people can look and see what the companies are. I'll let you explain it better than I can.
Well, what I did, I had already moved all around the US, and I was renting apartments in the US, but I was not doing that through Airbnb. In the United States, I'd look at a map and I would type in the word apartments on top of Google Maps or whatever it was back in the day.
Right.
What MapQuest? Whatever it was. Yeah. MapQuest. Yeah. So I would just type in apartments or apartment complexes, because that was like common vocabulary in across the US. And that's
we'd
where
use
I would
Craigslist.
find these like,
remember Craigslist?
Sure. Yeah.
And
anything like that. I mostly rented from bigger apartment complexes. So they would have, I would be able to get a carport or a garage. Maybe they had a pool in some kind of community center. I kind of liked that as I moved across the US. And so doing it abroad, I just had to tweak the vocabulary words I was using to do my search. And now I use Google Maps. It's just a nice resource. So now what I do, here I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And before I got here, when I was doing my research, I opened up Google Maps over the city and I started typing in property management or property managers or real estate companies. And then you can see where pins come up on the map for these different companies, and you can click on it to see if they have a website, a WhatsApp number. On their website, they'll show listings that are available, or you can reach out as well and kind of give them your criteria and your dates, and you can negotiate that way. I technically got this particular unit in Airbnb. I do like to use Airbnb at first for my research because it will give me an idea of the type of accommodations that are in a region. This is a big metropolitan city, so I'm in a condo building. It's a studio. My bed and TV is over there, and then my kitchen is right here with my washing machine, and then my bathroom's on the other side. So it's all open floor plan. And it works for me. I'm a solo traveler. And what I did though is before I book on Airbnb, you can message the host. And I always ask 1 or 2 questions about the unit because I want to see how they respond. I want to get a feel for how they manage a property. And I also, give them praise. Hey, I found your unit. It looks great. I ask my question, I wait for them to get back to me, and then I'll come in, oh, that sounds great. And then with this one, I think I said something like, it's slightly, thank you so much for the information. It's slightly over my budget. By chance, could you accept this number for, it's a month that I'm renting? Mm-hmm. And then I just wait for their response. And they actually said, sure, not a problem. And then on their end, as a host, they can offer me a special pricing. I get a link, and then I can just pay it on my credit card. So that's how I chose to negotiate this one. So,
yeah. And it's something that people don't even think about. Like, people don't even think when they're getting a place for a month that they've got room, they've got negotiating room, because the worst someone can do is say, no, we're not going to, we're not going to honor
or counter,
Or they'll counter with a higher price, but negotiate. I mean, life is a negotiation.
And I kind of already learned this back when I was working for that last ed tech company. They were based out of Virginia, but I was in Arizona, and I often had to go out to California. Now, granted, I'm gone for a couple days at a time, so I'm just staying in a hotel, but we only had a certain amount we could spend on a hotel by corporate policies. And California is more expensive, and it was very difficult for me to find something in that range. So what I did was I would look up, often I stayed at Hilton properties. That's just where we were earning our points.
Sure.
But I would find the email address for the manager of the specific location I'm going to. I would send them a quick message saying I'm coming in town for work. I tend to come to this region a couple times a year. Do you have a manager special? I will let them know first, though, with the company I work for, our rate only, covers this amount, whatever it was. Do you have a manager special that could get it closer to that rate, or can you honor that rate? And they would often come back and be able to say yes with that. So you can do that with hotels too. I rarely stay in hotels now, but that was a great thing to do back then when I was still kind of being the corporate person.
Yeah. And I mean, you've really perfected all steps of travel. Like, this is just one example, but I've seen your posts, which we'll talk about later, but A Suitcase and a Smile is your Facebook page. And you do have a number of links that we'll talk about a little bit later, but you often post these different hacks that you have. So as you're traveling to these various countries, for an example, I've seen one where you talked about the plans for public transportation and the ways in which you're able to use the publicly available transportation to get to all these beautiful places that Uber and these tour buses and all these other places are just charging several hundreds of dollars, sometimes, in the upper mid, $500-$600 for what you could just take a bus to go do.
Yeah. Yeah. Today, so I met up with a group of friends that I have here. We met at a train station, and it would have taken me about maybe a 45-minute walk to get there, but I didn't want to be all hot and sweaty because we were going to be out walking all day. So I took 2 public buses, and I think it cost me $1.20 or right around there. So maybe $1. And to get to the train station where I met my friends. And then the train was about a 40-minute ride to another town called Tigre. And it was about a 72-cent ride there and then back. So it just, you can't beat, and that was just a public train that you hop on, and it goes to the end of the line. And then we get out in this other town and we walked around, we saw markets. It's an area that has a bunch of rivers, and we actually took a boat that's kind of like a tour. There was an audio guide on the boat, and it was a little over an hour, and it was a lot of fun. And that was $6 a person to go do that. So that was a touristy thing we did together as a group. And
but a lot of times you're not even doing touristy things either. You're finding a place to go snorkel, or you're finding a nice beach to just put your chair on and lay down and read a book or listen to a podcast. That's what I just love about following your adventures, is that you find very simple things to do in these nations. And along the way, tell us a little bit about some of the people that you meet and how you do that.
Yeah, I have friends all over the world now. So what I did I left the US in 2019, and I headed south because, Mexico's the next place, and it's right there and it's easy to get to. So before I got to my location there, Puerto Morelos, between Cancun and Playa del Carmen, I had joined some local Facebook groups. I looked for various ones about other digital nomads because I was curious to connect, because I was still working at that time. I had my business. I wanted to connect with other people that worked online and travel the world. But then I also wanted to connect with what we call expats or expatriates, people that have moved to another country from their own, and they're now living in there.
So it's not just Americans that are expatriates. When you say expats, it's not just Americans. Oh.
No, if you were born and raised here in Argentina and you choose to go move to another country and live, you're an Argentine expat. I'm a US expat because I was born in the US. Yeah. So you can be an expat whenever you leave your citizen country. Yep. So in these types of Facebook groups, it's kind of how I do my recon to get information about what it's going to be like when I get on the ground, and what do I need to know before showing up. And also what's great with these groups is that they'll post events. So I quickly met friends by going to like a game night at a restaurant. So they met up for dinner and they were playing this dice game called Left, Right, Center. And it was a really simple game, but it was super nice group. I think there were like 12 of us. So they just welcomed me with open arms. They knew I was a new person in town because they kind of get a regular crew each week. And everybody's just super nice because they understand where you're coming from. They too have left their home country to go live somewhere else. And I just find that expats and nomads are really welcoming to other people new to a region. And so I jump in that. I like doing, I go to a lot of pub trivia if I can find it, or quiz night, whatever we call it, trivia, bar trivia in the US, pub quiz in other countries. To be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of playing the game myself, but I'm going for the social aspect and to make friends. And I do have a good time, but it's not like my favorite thing to do, but it's something to get out there. Yeah. And so I'm looking for things like that. If there's maybe some sort of holiday event going on that's special, people will post in these groups saying, hey, I'm going to go to this event or ceremony of some sorts. Would anyone like to join me? And then you go to that meetup spot, and then together in a small group, you get to enjoy the experience together. So I just keep doing things like that and meet people all over the world. And by joining these Facebook groups before I get somewhere, I get to see the types of activities and involvement there may be. And sometimes I get to places and they don't have a lot of those things going on. And so what I'll do is post in the group a quick little introduction. Hi, this is Christina. I'm new to the area. I'm going to be here a handful of months. I'd love to make some new friends. Would anyone like to meet for coffee? I'll pick a place and a time because I love going out to coffee anyways. So no matter what, I'm going to go to a coffee shop. If somebody joins me or not, sure. I have always had a minimum of 2 people come and join me when I post this. So
That's
I
great.
normally do it like 2 days out, 1 or 2 days out. So it's not like too far
To
in
where people forget.
advance. And yeah, yeah. And if some of the Facebook groups will allow the actual like event that you can, program, because then people can RSVP. I've learned to do that. You get a much larger group at happy hours in the evening. What I find with those, though, is that sometimes when the group is too big, it's really difficult to visit and truly meet everyone. So I love setting up a coffee meetup for a weekday around 10:30 in the morning. Typically, no matter what, you're going to talk for at least an hour. We always end up talking for 2. And then at that point in time, so it's 11:30, 12:30, and then normally I'm hungry. If I'm enjoying the crowd, I will suggest, hey, would anyone like to go get lunch? And I will already have scoped out a nearby restaurant to walk to within minutes. So I'll have that in my back pocket. And if for some reason I just feel like I'm not jiving with the group, then I'll thank them for joining me for coffee and politely say I need to go on with the rest of my day. So.
Christina, that's one of the things that I think I was really impressed about you when we met on the Virgin Voyage, is the fact that you're just so open to however it's going to turn out. And I think that a lot of people don't do that. They have so much expectations that when they meet somebody for the first time or they organize an event, it's got to be the greatest event, or they've got to have this instant connection with everybody there. And sometimes that'll happen and sometimes it won't. But if you don't place any expectations on it and you just say, hey, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to roll the dice and I'm going to see what happens. I think so many opportunities come your way just by just being open to it. And that's what I think it sounds like you do whenever you plan these events or you go to one of these meetups.
I agree. And I meet a lot of widowed people because also the reason why I'm picking during the week, mid-morning, is very purposeful. Meeting for coffee is like the least threatening thing you can do. You're going to a public place. It's during the week. I know a lot of people can't come because they might be working. Even some of the digital nomads might be working. So I typically eat older like traditional retirement age, a lot of widows, men and women. I tend to meet a lot more women in general traveling. There's more solo women traveling than anything else, I feel.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
We're out there.
You know
drones.
what, though? Christina, actually, that doesn't surprise me. Does not surprise me. And here's why. I truly do believe there is something to women knowing how to be alone in a way that men just typically are not used to and just
100%.
Don't do. And especially because women tend to outlive men, women have had also to adapt to, okay, my husband's going to pass away at some point, and now I have to figure out this other life that is still going. And what am I going to do at that time?
But a lot of them are still very shy. So what happens is that when I start a coffee meetup, I do it with the intention of repeating it from week to week when I'm in a community, so it can kind of build and grow. And even at the beginning of 2024, I was in Australia. I was outside of Cairns in a smaller community called Trinity Beach. I love small beach towns. That's what I go for as much as possible. And I started this coffee meetup, and I think the first time we still had like 8 to 12 people. It was ridiculous, I thought, but that was great. It showed that people in the community wanted this. They wanted to make friends because they were all expats. They had been living there for 6 months to 3 years, from the people I can remember. And some of the older women were saying, well, when you're gone, who's going to do this? And I'm like, well, you can. I will show you how to click the button called Create Event on Facebook and fill in the title and click a date and a time and a little brief explanation of what the coffee meetup is. I was like, just copy and paste from my week to week, and you lead it. You host it. All you have to do is show up and smile and be there to greet people.
Right.
So some of the places I've been, I know it's been carried on, this kind of like weekly meetup of some sort. When I was in Kotor, Montenegro, I didn't do a morning coffee meetup. I did a late afternoon, early evening kind of dinner out. And I would pick different restaurants around the community because I wanted to try them personally. And
Sure.
a lot of solo travelers don't like to eat alone. It is nice to have somebody there because then you can have a conversation just like this. And yeah, I would need a head count for that because I don't want to go to a small restaurant that maybe, only has a handful of tables in the first place. And then I bring a group of 15 people and,
Sure.
freaks them out. So I try and create the event and ask for an RSVP. And then I try and give a restaurant a heads up to make sure they can accommodate us. And then the separate bills thing that can, when you're ready to
Oh
pay.
my God, that's a nightmare in certain countries. It was
Yes.
in London,
Yeah.
they just won't do it at all.
Yeah.
And then you get
Here
into
they
this.
don't like to, depending on where we are and how we ask. Some of my Spanish is horrible, but some other people speak it a little bit better. And we try our best because I think if you're trying to speak the local language, they'll give you a little bit more wiggle room. But I know for a fact, like when I was in Split, Croatia, they just flat out would say no at almost every place I went to with a group. So what we would do, somebody would pick it up on their credit card, and then the rest of us would either give them cash or PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, Wise.
Sure.
You just electronically transfer the equivalent over to the person picking up the check. So
Right.
yeah.
It is so interesting how you just sort of have learned how to navigate this world. I mean, because you're living a lifestyle, especially as a single woman. Not only are you doing this, you've been doing this now since, oh my gosh, like 6 years.
Yeah.
You're planning you have strategies that you've worked into place. Did you ever think when you started this in 2019 that you'd still be doing this in 2025?
I knew I would be doing this until my last breath. So
Really? Wow. So you think,
intention.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was my intention because I had already moved so much around the US. Because even in some of the places like Louisiana, I think I only lived there 13 or 14 months, so just over a year. Chicago, I think I made it a little over 2 years. It's cold there. I don't like cold weather. And Texas was a handful of years. Arizona was a handful of years. So it's not like, and even in Kansas, my parents divorced. I lived in multiple homes as a young adult. I'm renting apartment year to year or even 9 months, not necessarily all 12. So I just moved a lot. But
So this
I
was
was
your
moving
life
with,
as a kid.
yeah.
too.
So it wasn't the only difference now is that instead of moving boxes and furniture, I have one suitcase and a day pack. And so I just significantly downsized to make life easier. Actually, I started out with a little bit more than that. And my first plane ride to get to Mexico, when I got to my apartment, I said, nope, not doing this. And I started taking out half my stuff. It was just way too much stuff. But it's hard to downsize. I mean, the last house I had in Arizona was huge for me. It was like 2,500 square feet, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-car garage, pool, hot tub, the whole shebang, because that's the American way, if you
Right.
will.
And that's what we get. That's what we get told. Like
Yep.
there's this almost like this societal thing that comes in
Yep.
and says, you will do this. You are going to get married. You are going to make this much money. You are going to have this kind of job. You are going to have children. And sometimes we just don't think to think through some of those assumptions. We don't think through to go, do I need to have children? Do I need to get married? Do I have to live in one place my whole life? Do I even have to work as long as I'm not a burden on other people? And
Yeah.
I'm providing a service. And that's the other thing, Christina, is that you might not be working, but you're also providing a service. So tell me a little bit about that too, because this extends way further, in my opinion, of you just being a solo traveler. There's so much to what you're doing that I think might get lost if we don't touch upon it.
Sure. Yeah. So when I left the US in 2019, I started a website, a blog website. It's free. It's on Wix.com. So it has a really long URL because I refuse to pay for a domain name because It's
That's
just a
awesome.
repository. It's a brain dump out of me and a repository of resources. And I've now learned to consolidate over, yeah, there you go. So it's a clunky website, but when you actually get out to the blog articles, that's where I dump a lot of information about, yeah, it's been a while since I've
How a
even looked at
scammer
that. Thank
helped
you.
me find a rental. Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
that was
Some
a
of these
good one. I
sound
forgot about that.
some of these
But
sound
yeah, like,
really interesting.
how do I rent locally around the world? What do I do for cell phone, healthcare? A lot of
Wow.
people do ask me, how do I support my lifestyle and everything like that. So when I get a lot of the same question over and over, I'll sit there and write a longer blog post about it. And
Wow. So you didn't have to pay for this website? You just were able
no,
to
that's all free.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So that's why it's
Wow.
clunky and it looks better on a
Sure.
laptop than it does on our cell phone. But hey, it's free. And if you pop over to my Linktree site, that's also free.
I'm
And
sorry, I'm stuck on this page too, where you've actually like broke down all
how
your
much it
expenses.
costs.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
And
Christina,
that, the expense part of it is really tough for me, especially in the nomad community. So I always have to preface that the last handful of years that I was living in the US, I was spending between $100 a year on myself because that's how much I was making. I'd make it, I'd spend it. And as a nomad, the past 5.5 years, I think my numbers average out to be about 45,000 annually. So going from spending upwards of 120,000 to 45,000, that's a huge decrease. And I'm living a really great life. So for me, I'm proud of the decrease in spending. But in the nomad community, there's a lot of people that live well under $20,000 a year, US, when you compare it back to that. And so people look at me and they're much, and I'm like, no, I don't, because it's where I came from, what I was
Sure.
doing before.
Right.
So I'm proud of my numbers. This works for me. I was able to save and invest, and I'm really comfortable with what I'm spending. I have no reason to spend less, because if I did, then my investments would grow at such a rate, and I don't have kids and I'm not married and I'm not interested in adding those two factors into my life. So I want to spend what I have to have my best life. And
Yeah. I don't
so I
blame
just
you.
have no reason to do what other people are doing by reducing the spending
Right.
that much.
Well,
So
we think about the same things, my husband and I. At some point, we're just going to have to start paying ourselves our investments because my plan is to retire in a year, March 1st, 2026. And
nice.
when that I've put in my retirement paperwork, so I'm just waiting to get it back. But at some point, because like you, I don't intend to go back to a 9 to 5. I will volunteer, I will podcast, I will work for causes that I'm passionate about, but I don't want to be in a position where I have to go into an office and work this many hours. That kind of lifestyle isn't what I want for myself anymore. So, but in order to do that, I knew that, like you, there was going to be decisions I'd have to make in my early 30s is really when I started, late 20s, early 30s. And now I'm my, late 40s, I'm 48. So this was a movement, not a movement, I wouldn't say. This was a plan that I had in my head for a long time. And it wasn't until very recently, within the last 3 or 4 years, I learned that there was this community of people who had the same idea. And that was really interesting because with fire, I don't know how it works overseas, but in many of the states, you can network with other people that are part of the fire community. And there's even, I think Choose FI is one of them, where you can look for meetup groups within your particular city. And they have events. And I went to a number of them when I was stationed in San Diego, and I met really great, like-minded people who had the same thoughts about being able to spend your time doing the things that you're most passionate about, but knowing that you have to be extremely good with money in order to choose that lifestyle. But like you said, there are people that do it in an RV or wherever for 20 grand a year, and
Yeah.
it's possible.
And they're all living fabulous lives too. So just because they spend less doesn't mean that, you know, they have like a lesser quality of life by any means. I have this one couple and then another solo guy nomad that and the couple is, I have a lot of fire nomad friends. There are specific groups for nomads that are also in the FI community. So I've got all that. There's so many subgroups of it, and there's a lot of us out there.
That's
So, but
awesome.
these two kind of people, this Explore Genes is their tagline. That's a couple, Mandy and Greg, and then another buddy of mine. He doesn't. He has a Facebook page, but he doesn't do blogs or anything. He's a solo male traveler, former U.S. military actually as well. And both of those homesteads, if you will, or sets of nomads, they spend less than $20,000 a year. And because it's the first of the new year, they just recently put out their numbers. And I think both of them were really close to like 17,000 for the whole year, respectively, between the two. And like, I just giggle because, you know, and they move a lot faster than I do. And, so meaning they go to more places in a year than what I do. We live nomadically different. We spend differently, but in essence, we're still doing the same thing. We're all living nomadically, and we all live out of a bag and go from place to place. So,
you know, it's so funny because it's like I have a lot of Choose FI friends that are military. So now I've just got to get the trifecta, military, nomad, and fire all at the same time.
I can introduce you to my one buddy who I won't mention his name on here just because he doesn't have like a huge public presence. Sure. So I don't know, you know, I don't want to name drop in case he's not interested in that, but I can connect you. So
awesome.
Yeah, I don't remember his role, but something with engineering. I know that we're both really nerdy with our spreadsheets. So we were friends online in these Facebook groups for a couple years. And then by chance in 2022, we happened to be in the same town, Kotor, Montenegro. One of them I had already mentioned. And we overlapped for about 2 weeks. So we got to hang out. And the first time we hung out, because we both share some of our spreadsheets online, I asked him while we were sitting there at lunch or something, I'm like, can I see your spreadsheet? So he whips out his phone and he's like, okay, but I want to see yours. So we bring him up and then like we pass our phones to each other and, you know, but his is way more robust. Mine are simple. I like simple templates. I build everything myself and I share some of my templates on my Linktree site. I know you have a copy of that URL as well.
I do.
So people can get some free resources off of me. So that's kind of like my mentorship that I'm doing. I technically retired or stopped working my business in April of 23. So it's coming up on almost 2 years. And I've been living on my investment since then. But I do feel like, you know, participating in events like this or opportunities like this, sharing the resources that I use for myself as, you know, a nomad on fire, if you will, and then just my everyday, my Facebook page, A Suitcase and a Smile, is where I share kind of my everyday journal of what's happening in my life with photos and it's real and it's raw. So,
well, I'll pull it up real quick. I love your Facebook page. I mean, I learn a lot just going on it. And you're right. You kind of just post about your daily life, what's happening for that day. Oh, I don't know why. Wait.
That's the Linktree. If you, I don't know if you can scroll down just a little bit. I think in the second or third.
Okay, let me see. So I'm on here now. Where to find me? Facebook, daily posts from around the world, right here. Can you see it?
No, I'm not seeing your cursor, but if you scroll down, there should be like some free resources and stuff. And those are the things. I'm not sure if you can scroll. Something's bouncing on the page.
Okay, let me see what you're seeing on your end. Okay. Oh, I see right here. Okay. So now let me go to it. Can you see me? I'm going all the way down. Here we go. Popular articles at the bottom right here, or product referrals. but I can put some of these links to you guys at the end of the podcast in the show notes so that people can go to them. But I also have a link to your link tree on the podcast, and then I will also show it here. But I mean, you've got everything covered here. That's what's so nice. You have all this information is there, and it's really valuable for people that haven't been down this journey yet. They don't have the resources yet to know where to go. There's just so many things to understand, and we do have one joiner who just said, Terry. She says, make your bag small because you might find out what you need along the way. I heard this quote from another nomad person. Much appreciation for sharing your life travels. Best wishes and safe travel.
Thanks,
So,
Terry.
yes, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. So
Yeah.
thank you. I absolutely love this topic.
I would love to talk about the whole bag thing. So this is packing. All the nomads love to share. They want to see what's in your bag, what size is your bag. Or do you check your bag? Are you carry-on only? Like, it's such a thing. Like, and so it's funny, but like, tomorrow, actually, my task for tomorrow is that because I'm in a big city, there's malls here. And so I'm going to go to a big mall because I normally only own 2 pairs of shoes, but I technically have 3 right now. I had to pick up a pair of tennis shoes because of where I am and what I'm doing coming up. But I have a pair of sandals. And the thing is, because I walk almost everywhere, sure, I take public transit occasionally, but honestly, I'm just on foot the majority of the day.
Yeah, so, and you do your steps and everything. Yeah. We were talking about it. We both count steps.
I'm on the hunt to replace my sandals that are like, they're not Tiva brand, but like that, right? Mm-hmm. And so tomorrow I have to go to the mall, and normally shoes are no problem for me because my feet are like a normal size. However, I'm a bigger female, and finding clothes that fit me in a lot of countries is very, very difficult. And also finding clothes in the fabric that I like. I'm personally obsessed with Columbia sportswear, which is mostly out of the US, but there's a store here in the mall. There's 2 stores in the city. So my goal is to go find them both. Their shirts, this is not a Columbia shirt. I just bought this across the street at a local market 3 days ago for $5.
Well, it's super cute.
It is. And it's a secondhand shirt, but I absolutely loved it. And it was in my size. I wear extra large tops, and same with bottoms. I'm just a bigger woman, and it can be really hard. So like in Asia, when I was in Southeast Asia, I had a very difficult time trying to find some things to replace. So for me, clothes, I kind of replenish in the US just because I know my size in certain clothing stores. So I can order online. I'll order some shirts and dresses. I'll send them to like my mother, who then meets up with me once a year. And so whenever she meets up with me, she brings me new clothes. But I mean, I buy them and just get them mailed to her, and then she brings them to me around the world. But I'm hopeful that tomorrow I can replace my sandals and hopefully get a few new tops, because I have about 5 shirts, and one of them is almost 6 years old now. Actually, no, 2 of them are. I'm tired, and they look great. They, you wash and line dry. I often don't have access to dryers like you do in the US. You just line dry everything. But I'm sick and tired of seeing myself in the same freaking shirt in every picture I have.
Yeah. So, and your pictures are really good, Christina. I remember I went walking with you the few times we hung out together, and really you have a knack for making the mundanes interesting. That's really what it is. You have a knack for that, showing the parts of the city that people don't think about or that people just take for granted. You will take a picture of it, and then you have a story that goes with it that's incredibly detailed. I really enjoy reading your posts. I mean, you're providing a service. You're showing people that this life is not only possible, it's fun. It's a different decision than what is, the traditional path. And it can be very enjoyable. I mean, it's made me realize that there might, God forbid something were to happen to my husband. I mean, it makes me sad to even think about it, but I've got to think through. I mean, most women do outlive men. And what is my life going to look like in those very, very late stages? Hopefully I'll stay fit and I'll keep exercising and being able to get around. But I mean, I could see myself being a nomad. Absolutely. I mean, it's a possible lifestyle for people who are in a position where they want to really experience the world and they want to meet people and they want to have different experiences.
And there's so many different ways to do it. So here in Buenos Aires, there's, I don't know, there's like about 20 of us that are kind of running around in smaller groups right now, but we have a group chat with like 60 people in there. Some of them aren't here quite yet. They're getting here later in January, but we just meet up in small groups and go hang out, and we share our experiences with each other. But we do it so differently. So one couple that I'm with here, they're Australian, but they're actually really nomading around Europe. I know Argentina is not in Europe. I'll get to that in a minute. But they nomad by having a car. So they bought a car somewhere in Europe and they have stuff in it and they drive around the country, and then they stay in apartments like this or houses. So they're not sleeping in their car, but they have a car because that's how they want to get around that continent. Where I have other friends, actually I met this guy in Vietnam. He's actually Vietnamese, but he went, his mom took him to the United States, like I think at like 3 months or something like that. So he has one of those like Airstream trailers in Washington, D.C. on a friend's plot of land in the middle of the city, which I think is like so cool. And that's kind of like his base, but then he will rent a van and do van life around the US, or he'll go abroad. I met him in Vietnam, and he'll go to Southeast Asia and just travel around out of a bag like I'm doing. What else we have? Oh, another couple that's here with me right now. They have a home in Mexico. They're on the Puerto Vallarta. They're somewhere more on the west side. And but right now they've been traveling for 8 months. They haven't been home. So they've been renting it out while they've been traveling, but they're getting ready to go back to their base, and they don't know how long they're going to stay there, whether it's a couple months or several. So there's so many. And then like myself, I don't have a home base at all. I don't have a storage unit anywhere. And everything I have now is just in one medium suitcase, which I do check. And it weighs 17.5 kilos. And then I have a day pack, like a regular school backpack, and that one weighs 7 kilos, and that stays with me on the plane. And so that's everything I own in life, and I go from place to place. But for example, how I got over to South America from Europe, I was in Portugal with friends, and we jumped on a cruise ship and we took a transatlantic repositioning cruise that ended in Buenos Aires. And so instead of doing a long haul flight across, from one continent to another and across the ocean, I did a 2.5-week cruise with 15 friends, 14 other nomad friends. And that's how we went from Portugal to Argentina. So you don't have to fly everywhere. You can use a cruise ship to get from point A to point B too. And even this summer in Europe, I went from living in Greece to over in Albania, and I took a ferry. I didn't have to fly. I took a ferry over, and then I walked to my apartment from the ferry port. So,
yeah, I love hearing your stories when you first land into a place and you're getting into the Airbnb or whatever, the apartment you're setting up, and you just have these certain things that you like to go do. And then it's neat to follow your adventures as you're doing it. And then think like you're showing everyone that this is possible. Like anybody can do this, even if you can't do it all the time. You can take time off, or if you're able to work from home, you can try to do an arrangement where you can work. What do you have planned for, as we're winding down the call? What do you have planned for 2025?
So I am going to be here in Argentina for a couple more weeks. So towards the end of the month. And then I'm heading up to Ecuador. I actually have some family from the US that have moved to Ecuador, I don't know, I think over a decade ago. And this will be my 3rd time visiting them. So I'm going to hang out for a little bit. And I'm actually going to dump most of my stuff at their place. They're providing me with a smaller carry-on size bag, and I'll pack that up. And then I'm going on a vacation to the Galapagos. So I'm going to go snorkel my heart out, play with some sea animals and see some, I think I get to see penguins and all sorts of different stuff. Walk a volcano edge too. That's why I need my tennis shoes. I'll ditch them after that. My family lives in a mountain town, and so having the tennis shoes, like a pair of pants, closed-toed shoes, socks, are important there, where normally I stick to beach life, where it's like flip-flops and in a bathing suit and a cover-up all day. So
yeah, I remember I read this blog post from you where you got a lawn chair for like $5 and you just spent the day on the beach. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a perfect day.
I take a little picnic lunch. I go to the beach all day long. I swim, I snorkel, I listen to podcasts. I really like having a paper Sudoku book, the math puzzles. And so I sit there, and then that way I'm not on my phone the whole entire time. Sure. I like doing the paper puzzles. So, but then, friends will join me, and then we just talk for hours and swim together and stuff. And,
love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So,
well, Christina, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm so happy that we made the time to do this. Is there anything else that I didn't ask that you'd like to add?
No, I think I really appreciated our conversation, and thanks for bringing up the topics that you did.
Well, I definitely want people to check out your website. As I was saying, let me scroll to this banner right here. You can check her out, Christina Gawlik, Christina, and then Gawlik. And if you Google it, I'm pretty sure your link tree or one of these sites will come right up. But it's been such a pleasure. It will. Okay, wonderful.
And definitely.
Oh, go ahead.
Definitely find me on Facebook at A Suitcase and a Smile, and follow me there. Share my posts. So there's about 8,600 followers on that page right now. So we get some good comments. I like to go back and forth with people. So it's fun.
Yep. And you can buy you a coffee, which is a great way to just support some of the efforts that you're doing to educate. I mean, that blog is definitely a labor of love. As I was scrolling through it, I just really could see the amount of time and the work that you put into helping to educate other people and really show that this is a possible lifestyle for so many. But I'm going to meet you backstage and go full screen for just a moment. But thank you so much, Christina, for coming on the Stories of Service podcast.
Thank you. This is fun.
Awesome. All right, guys. Happy New Year. I think I forgot to say that at the beginning of the call. So hope you enjoyed a little bit of time with family, friends. If this was a tough time of year for you, please know that I'm thinking about you. And it's been a tough time of the year for me in the past. So I've definitely been there and had those times. I will be here with you next week. We've got a pretty exciting lineup in January. I've got advocates on all sides of the aisle. I've got a gentleman on who got out of the Army over the COVID mandate. I have another advocate that worked in women's policy in the Pentagon. So I really can't wait to bring you all of the guests. And as I always say when I close out these calls, I hope you take care of yourselves, take care of each other, enjoy the rest of your evening, and stay safe. Bye-bye now.